Hello again, students, and welcome to Chapter 2, where we will be covering biology and psychology. These two fields are closely related because biological functioning serves as the foundation for psychological mechanisms, so that the cellular activity, in particular the activity of neurons in the brain, determines the functioning of our brain and of course our behavior as well. The question here is, where are the characteristics that we possess come from? And whenever we mention the word evolution, we have to discuss for a moment Charles Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection. The theory suggests that whenever there is a struggle for existence, natural selection takes place, where only individuals that carry the characteristics that are more beneficial will be able to survive, or at least they'll have a greater probability for survival. And whenever you increase an organism's probability of survival, you're also increasing the probability of an individual's ability to reproduce. And whenever an organism reproduces, they will pass on, at least in part, some of the characteristics that they possess to the next generation. Now, the differentiation of characteristics in a population can be explained by mutation. Mutation are random genetic variation that explain differences in individuals, so that we can explain why individuals within the same species have slightly different characteristics. Now, in evolutionary psychology, we focus not only on the biological characteristics that are passed on from generation to generation, but also we focus on behavior. So patterns of behavior that are passed on from generation to generation that are found within a species. So instincts are the stereotype pattern of behavior that are triggered in a specific situation. Such as, for example, as we will discuss later in the semester, we have behavior such as imprinting, where ducks and geese follows the mother typically, and that particular behavior occurs as a result of this instinct that everyone in that species possess, and forces the individual to behave in a particular way. Now, why are these behavior so prevalent in a particular population? And the answer is because they are advantageous, because they give an individual an advantage for survival and therefore reproduction as well. So they resist, they stick around, because individuals that possess those characteristics are more likely to survive. Now, whenever we talk about these drives that causes individual to behave in particular way that are passed on from generation to generation, as well as very basic characteristics such as functioning of cells in a particular way. How do we pass on these characteristics from one generation to the next? And these characteristics are passed on through genes. Genes are basic units of heredity that carry particular instruction. These genes are found on chromosomes. Chromosomes are structures within the cell nucleus that carries the genes, And human beings have 46 chromosomes arranged in 23 pairs. So we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. These chromosomes are made up of DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, which is a substance that forms these chromosomes. DNA is structured as a double helix, and this double helix, these two strands of DNA, are held together by nucleotides that are labeled as either A, T, C, and G. Now, the peculiarity about these nucleotides is that they attach to one another only in particular ways, so that A only connects to T, and therefore T also only connects to A. C only connects to G, and again, therefore G only connects to C. Let me explain that a little bit better by, again, looking at the micro level here, a cell, and the nucleus of the cell, right? And within the nucleus of the cell we have these 23 pairs of chromosomes that are floating around. So every single cell of our body contains these 23 pairs of chromosomes, and within the chromosome itself is made up of this double helix, two strands in a helical form that are held together by these nucleotides, these bases, A, T, C, and G. So here's a close-up of the double helix, and as you can see, on one side, one helix, one helical structure here at the top, you have A on one side, and this A attaches to T on the other side. A little further down we have AT again. If you look a little further down we have GC, and so on. Now, why is this important? Because the sequence of these nucleotides determines the functioning of that particular gene. In other words, if you have a particular sequence of bases in a particular way, that might code, let's say, for brown eyes. On the other hand, if you have in the same location within that chromosome sequence of bases that is different, so instead of, let's say, AT here, there is CG, that might code for blue eyes. Okay, so depending on the sequence of these bases, we have particular characteristics. We exhibit particular characteristics. Here is a depiction of the 23 pairs of chromosomes that are found in humans. Now, animals, some animals have a different number of chromosomes than we do. You see the pairs of chromosomes where each chromosome in the pair is fairly similar to the other. So it's almost an identical set of chromosomes within each pair, except for one, except for chromosome number 23. Now, the first 23 chromosomes determines everything in our body, determines how we are and our specific characteristics of each individual, biologically, of course. On the other hand, chromosome number 23 focuses on the sex. and therefore chromosome number 23 is called the sex chromosomes. It determines the gender of that particular individual. If an individual chromosome number 23 is XY, that individual will be a male, while if the individual possesses a chromosome number 23 that's XX, then that individual will be a female. So XX, chromosome number 23, results in a female. XY, chromosome number 23, results in a male. And so these genes regulate the development of specific traits. Some traits are determined by one gene, single gene inheritance, that's called. But those are very few. Most traits are polygenic, meaning that they are controlled by a number of different genes, sometimes residing on different chromosomes, that together, depending on their interaction, regulates the development of particular traits. Again, we can think of basic biological traits like hair color or color of the eye. Or we can also think about, especially when we discuss psychological phenomena, this behavior that, of course, may be much more complex than the simple inheritance of biological characteristics. Now, let me go back for a moment and talk about why we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. Why do we need 23 pairs? And again, probably most of you already know this, but I want to point it out anyway. The reason why we have 23 pairs of chromosomes is because as an individual we receive one chromosome from our biological father and the other chromosome from our biological mother. It turns out that I wasn't completely accurate a few moments ago when I said that all our cells contains 23 pairs of chromosomes. There's one type of cell that doesn't contain 23 pairs of chromosomes in their nucleus, and that is sex cells. We're talking about sperm in males and eggs in females. Those particular cells only contain 23 single chromosomes from the sperm, 23 single chromosomes from the father, right, coming from the DNA of the father, and the 23 single chromosome in the egg coming from the chromosome of the mother. When fertilization occurs, as we will see later again when we discuss fertilization, when fertilization occurs, the 23 single chromosome in the sperm coming from the father fuses with the 23 single chromosome in the egg, producing an organism, a single cell at that moment, that is composed of 23 pairs of chromosomes, half from the father and half from the mother. So if we have pairs of instruction for particular traits, in some cases those instructions could be different, and if instructions are different, we have to talk about the difference between a genotype, which is the individual's genetic makeup, so carried by instructions rather, carried from both chromosomes, and the phenotype, which is the actual appearance. In other words, an individual could have instruction for their eye color that is blue from the father but brown from the mother. Right? So brown blue would be the genotype. Their actual appearance would be the phenotype. And whenever there is a pair of instruction that's different, we have to talk about the difference between dominant and recessive genes. So within that pair, let's say brown, blue, one of those two instructions is dominant and the other one is recessive. In the case of eye color, brown is dominant. So when there is brown, blue, brown is used as the phenotypical instruction that will be followed to produce the actual appearance of that individual, while the genotype of that individual will also contain, though, the blue instruction. Okay. So we already talked about this. 23 pairs of chromosomes. XX will result in a female, XY in a male. Now, in some situation, there's some possible chromosomal abnormalities that occurs in individuals. So whenever the code that is carried in chromosomes, or the actual number of chromosomes in some cases, is not what is supposed to be, that results in a chromosomal abnormality. Down syndrome is a very typical example of this, where because of error in a transmission of chromosomes, these individuals are born with 3 chromosomes, 21, right? So Down syndrome is also known as trisomy 21, because again, this individual, instead of having the normal 2 chromosome, a pair of chromosome, they have 3. Now sometimes this genetic abnormality are at the level of a chromosome, as we discussed in the previous slide, but sometimes they're at the level of a gene. So in this case, you see an example of the transmission to the next generation of sickle cell anemia. Now, in red here, or in this pinkish color, you'll see the gene that carries the information relating to the disease, the sickle cell anemia. And in this blue color, you'll see it represents information carrying in that particular gene the healthy trait for sickle cell anemia. So it's not sickle cell. By the way, sickle cell anemia affects the red blood cell developing as a sickle shape, so that they do not function properly. Instead of being round and plump and properly functioning, they're like shaped as a half moon, and they don't work as well as they should. Right, so in this case, you'll see the father that carries the trait of sickle cell anemia, but because sickle cell anemia is a recessive trait, it doesn't affect the father. It's not expressed as a phenotype. It only stays at the level of the genotype. The mother as well, same story. A mother carries the trait for the sickle cell anemia, because sickle cell anemia is recessive, is not expressed. However, if this father and mother get together to produce an organism, to reproduce, they would have this combination, so that this healthy gene from the father and the healthy gene from the mother will get together, producing a normal child. this healthy gene from the father and the sickle cell gene from the mother get together, producing a sickle cell trait, an individual carrying the disorder. Again, similarly here, an individual carrying a disorder. And in 25% of the probability, if these two individuals get together to procreate, this sickle cell trait from the father and the sickle cell trait from the mother will get together, giving birth to an individual that suffers from sickle cell disease.